was a momentary wonder, but the gift is mine to keep. A silent new awakening in a valley, drifting off to sleep. I thanked God that I should be here in an open, quiet place where heaven could come out within me. Where I was standing, oh what a light, taking me up upon its landing here inside. The grace of God expanding through my heart. What a light. Over Sherman speak tonight.
All right. You know, I love to speak. I love to be here with you all. I'm really grateful that in his moment of need, he felt like he could call me. That made me feel great this morning. And then I asked him if there was a subject for the month. And he said forgiveness. And I thought, oh, I think I can pull that out real quick. So I'm going to share with you a few things that matter to me that I've learned about this. The first thing I want to start with is, so you know the subject is forgiveness. But Kurt called me, and I also spoke with Wendy this morning and his wife. And this is because Sally's ego is alive and well. I said, I'm happy to do this. I would really like it if when you announce me, you tell them this was last minute. Okay? So I just wanted to be real transparent with you about that, because the fact is, only my ego is concerned about that. My highest self, it's fine all the time. And that's a principle that I actually really want to share with you as I talk about the subject of forgiveness. So I'm going to share with you the definition of forgiveness, a couple of definitions that I found when I looked in the dictionary. And like all of us have, yes, I will assume this, but I'm just going to guess it's possible that when I say the word forgiveness, you all get a little bit of idea about what that is or what that means, or who knows. Whatever it is for you, you may have feelings about that. I want us to at least be on the same page as I discuss it today, and then at least you'll know where I'm coming from. So the two definitions that I found in the dictionary that I would use today, because some of the definitions I didn't like, and so I don't use those. I get to choose. I love this choice stuff. Here was one. To give up all claim on account of. It's a pretty good one. To cease to feel resentment. Another really, really good one that I liked. And my favorite, which wasn't in the dictionary, to let it go. That's my favorite. Forgiveness is it's just gone. Doesn't exist anymore. Now, I quickly this morning looked in my notes for a couple of things, looked on my computer for anything that I might have had that I could quickly draw on that had to do with forgiveness. But it had to really move my heart because I immediately had some things that came to my mind, and I just took a couple notes and jotted them down, and this is what I thought to share with you today. So, I've been a life coach for about 12 years. And in the course of my coaching, and most of my coaching was done when I lived in Texas, but I wrote some proprietary programs, which just means that I wrote my own system of coaching, and I wrote a number of different systems, and they were usually 8 to 12 weeks long. And then I would share them with groups of people. And I have had a lot of coaches in my life, a lot of teachers. I've read a lot of books, and I've listened to countless hours of programs and different things from different mentors and teachers that I admire, that I wanted to learn from. And I knew that almost every program I had been in, if it was many weeks or if it was several hours, whatever it was, the great teachers almost always had a section on forgiveness. And here I had been coaching for a number of years, and I wrote my own programs, and I would think, okay, what's the next thing I want to put in here? And I literally had the idea of forgiveness come to me, and I did not write it into my program. And the reason was, I didn't feel like I was practicing it. I didn't think like that Sally was good at letting it go, and I'm fine with being able to teach something and not be perfect at it, and still, I'm okay with that. We're all human. I understand that I can learn something and teach it and still fall short of the ideal. But when it came to forgiveness, it was so far short that my ego and I wouldn't teach it. And it bothered me a little bit. So some of my favorite teachers that I've spent countless hours with, Wayne Dyer, he and I were in the car for hours and hours. Every road trip I went on, he came with me. Now, he didn't know he was with me, but he was with me. And another one, and so I'm listening to him while I'm riding bike and I'm doing different things. Well, this was an interesting thing that happened to me. And it wasn't Wayne Dyer that I was listening to this time. I will share who it was, although I hesitate to share who it was just a little bit because I'm afraid some of you might push back on that one. Let me see if I should share it. It's okay. You can reject it or not. It's your choice. So one day I was on my bike, and I was in Texas. This was during the time when my husband was dying, and so I would take breaks sometimes to get some breath and refresh myself. Probably this was on a recording. I know it had to have been probably on my iPad at the time. I don't remember the program or I don't even remember where it came from, but I had something with Esther Hicks as Abraham speaking. And now when I'm riding my bike and I'm listening to something, it's not real active listening. It's kind of like I'm watching for traffic, I'm downloading other things, but I have this thing going in my ear set as well. And so I'm not paying full attention to what she's saying, but I'm riding along, and someone asked her a question about forgiveness. And I remember that I heard it, but I wasn't like really paying attention. And then her answer came, and her answer when they asked about how to forgive was, we don't do it. And it got my attention so much that I stopped my bike, I pulled off the road, I backtracked that a little bit. I'm like, whoa. Every great teacher I've ever talked to speaks on forgiveness. This person's saying I don't do it. So I go back and I listen to it again. I have to share with you, I didn't listen to it today. I don't even know where it is. I don't know what program it was. But as I recall, this was her message. She said, in order to forgive, you first have to judge. And we don't judge, so we never have to forgive. It knocked it was awesome. It knocked my ego out of me. It was so awesome. I had this sense of release. I went, I don't have to learn how to forgive. I'm not good at that. I just have to give up judging. It has made all the difference for me. Now, today's December 2nd? Do I still get triggered? Does my ego still get triggered? And I choose to get offended, and I judge, and then I have to do some forgiving? Yes. But I'm really a lot faster now at letting it go. towards myself as well as towards others. It has released so much in me. I just really hope that that concept can kind of settle in you a little bit. And I'm going to give you a couple examples so that hopefully you can put it to work in your life. I'm going to share just a little bit by Dr. Robert Anthony. I don't know what this came from either, but I had it in my computer. And this is a quote from him. If you think about it, when you choose to forgive someone, it is nothing more than an ego trip. When you say, I forgive you, what you are really saying is you have some sort of hold over them. By saying, I forgive you, you decree that you are pronouncing them free of your resentment. That isn't forgiveness. That's an ego trip. There is really nothing to forgive. What we call forgiveness is simply letting go. It is not placing judgment on other people or yourself. When you are truly conscious, you realize that nothing bad or wrong happened. You may judge it as bad or wrong, but from the view of all that is, what occurred is simply what occurred. It's done. Because we believe something bad happened, we still think of ourselves as being victimized. So no matter how much we try to forgive, we are caught between two conflicting energies. Now, some of you could be pushing back on that just a little bit and thinking, no, I'm justified. That's your ego. I'm telling you, it's always your ego. The ego's the only part that judges. Your highest self, your divine essence, that spirit that entered into your infant body and walks with you until it exits when you take your last exhale, it can't be offended. It cannot be harmed. It cannot be hurt. It is pure love. It is the essence of who each of us is. But our ego, we live with our ego and we develop it. I like to pretend, when I go to my highest self and I go within and I visit with my ego, it isn't just like one little ego. There's like a whole bunch of Sallys in there, okay? They sometimes argue among themselves. No, I'm really justified in this. You're not kidding, she is. Boy, and it's all, none of that's my divine self. So I have to sit back. I don't have to. I choose to. I have chosen to take the exercise of meditation to go within, to get in touch with that divine presence, that divine, pure, loving spot within me, and visit with my ego parts. Now, I was a parent. I have 4 children, they're grown, and a bunch of grandchildren, and I got to practice that with my children. And I want to share a couple examples of how I've seen this work in my life. Before I do that, I'm going to share with you one of my favorite, I bet every person in here is at least familiar with the book, The 4 Agreements. If I only could live my life by one book, that is it. I read that book several times a year. I revisit it. I remind myself of those 4 agreements, and 2 of them are just slam dunk on forgiveness. Never assume and don't take anything personally. How free would we be if we'd quit assuming? I've coached countless people, and I've been guilty of it myself. They're reading minds. I know she meant this. No, you don't know that. Your ego thinks it does, and your ego, it so wants to be right. And if you can just visit with it enough so that it calms down, which is what I try to do with little Sallys. I get that divine Sally, and we go in there, and we visit together, and I just try to love on them and help them know, you're not wrong. You had a feeling. Go ahead and feel the feeling. I can acknowledge that your foot got stepped on. It's okay. You can feel your pain. But you don't have to make any assumptions about where that came from or what that has to do with. And when I get to that loving space, I am much quicker able to release and let go. So, remembering not to take anything personally and not to make any assumptions. Are we going to get that before we croak? I don't know. I'm kind of doubting I'll totally perfect that one, but I'll tell you, better I do at it, the better it gets, the better it gets. Every time I exercise that and do it, I feel better. Now, so here's an interesting thing. I made up this thing in my head some years ago about, and I'm not sure it's perfect yet, even complete, but I think it might be. So let's just assume, this is not assuming that kind. This is just, let's do some scenarios, okay? And I'm going to use a really benign action, our toe getting stepped on, okay? So let's just assume I'm sitting in one of those rows and someone comes across beside me, and on their way coming through, they step on my toe. And then they sit down. Now, the first thing I want to acknowledge is it hurts. There is pain. So when we have things happen in our life, it does not mean we don't get to feel what we feel. It's how many times am I going to go back and feel this? I got my toe stepped on. Might have smarted a little bit. So go ahead, Sally, feel the pain. But here's the part that I want you to think about. I'm going to do 4 scenarios, same exact thing. First, and the number one thing is we get to feel our pain. We get to feel our feelings, okay? Because we learned last week, all of our feelings are gifts. They're all gifts. So in this first scenario, Kurt is the one moving beside me, and he has his little nose bent out of shape, and he looks at me, and he gives me a snarl, and he steps on my toe as he goes and sits down, and then he flips me off. So I'm pretty sure he did it on purpose. I'm pretty sure, okay? But I still am assuming it. There's a good chance that I'm accurate on that one. Here's the part that's up to me. I get to feel the pain because it does hurt for a couple minutes. He gets to deal with his stuff because what he did is his stuff. I get to choose now. What am I going to do with it? Am I going to judge him and hold it and relive it like for the next, forever? Or am I going to choose, because it's my choice, I'm going to feel that pain and let it go. Same scenario. Kurt's coming across. I love you, Kurt. Steps on my toe, sits down, just angry as heck, and I choose to take offense. The first time I chose to let it go. This time I'm going to choose to take offense. And I likely will replay it over and over and over again. But if I let it go, which is all within me, it does not matter what his intention was. I do get to feel it and let it pass through me. But if I choose to take offense, I can relive it over and over. I can justify my little ego, go crazy forever. Do you remember when he, oh yeah, some of you can relate to this maybe. And then, but who wins? Here's the deal. Who wins when I say, ouch, that really hurt? Golly, I bet Kurt was having a bad day. I wonder if he thought it was me that, who knows? It doesn't even matter. Because I cannot read his mind as much as I sometimes think I can read people's minds. I cannot. Even if he was flipping me off, do I really know it was to me? Could he have been doing it to the person next to me? Could he have been having a rough day? Could he have gotten a phone call that something horrible happened in his life that day? I don't know. I don't need to know any of that. Who wins when I don't judge it? When I just go, ooh, that hurt, and let it go? I win. I only have to feel it once. Now let's do the same scenario. Kurt's coming through the aisle, steps on my toe, sits down, totally doesn't acknowledge me in any way, shape, or form. Is it possible that he didn't know he did it? I still get to feel the pain. It still smarts. But I don't need to assume that he did it on purpose or he didn't do it on purpose. He may not have even known he did it. I still have the pain, but him saying I'm sorry won't make my pain feel any better. It might, when people bump into each other, we often just really quickly go, oh, excuse me. And when someone says that to us, do we release it about that quick? We release it that quick. It's our ego that releases it because it feels justified. Okay, they apologized. It's okay now. Because our divine self never took offense anyway. That same scenario, when I let it go, he comes through. He doesn't even know he stepped on my toe, and he sat down. I have two choices. I can choose to make all kinds of assumptions, to think it's about me, to say, he stepped on my toe and didn't even turn around and talk to me about it. Or, who loses? I lose. I get to revisit that for 10 years, where Kurt's going around going, I had no idea I even stepped on her toe. Why is Sally so ugly to me these days? Well, you should know. Why? Because he reads minds? Do you see how when we judge and we get into that pettiness, we can carry it forever? So we have people that could be hurting us totally on purpose. That's the scenario. They are doing it on purpose, that we have two choices there: to choose to carry it forever, or much longer than we need to, or to feel it and let it go. And then we have these people or experiences or institutions, something happens, and they don't even know that they've stepped on our toe. And we still have two choices. We can assume and take it personally and carry it and relive it, or we can feel it and let it go. One of the times when I was coaching, so I did end up adding forgiveness into my coaching programs. The analogy I did with the people I was with, I brought a backpack and I loaded it with a bunch of quite large rocks and heavy things. When we take offense, we're picking up a rock and we're putting it in our backpack. And when we say, I forgive, we're sometimes taking that one out and really releasing it forever. And then we think about it 6 months later and we pick it back up and we put it back in. And how heavy is that burden? Forgiveness. So I do tend to not use the word much. And if someone were to come to me and say, will you forgive me for something? It's likely I would use the words, yes, but it's only because that's kind of socially acceptable. It's also likely that I would look at someone and say, there's nothing for me to forgive. It's gone, it's done. Because if I actually were to look at you and say, I forgive you, I do feel that sense of ego in there, like I'm some high and mighty and you're going to be blessed to be bestowed my forgiveness. It creeps me out. I'm Sally Joe. I step on toes. Not usually on purpose. But it still inflicts discomfort, and I don't want to do that to anyone. Sometimes I still do. So I have to forgive myself too, which is only when I judge myself that I have to forgive myself. When we come from pure love, we don't have to forgive ourselves, we release it. And we do the same for others. Now, one thing that has been, I'm going to share two more things. One was the principle that Jesus taught. And I think this will make sense to you today, for any of you that know it. When, I think it was a Pharisee, I can't even remember because I didn't look it up this morning, but someone asked Jesus, how many times do we have to forgive someone? And Jesus' answer was, and they said, like 7 times? Because 7 times is a lot, unless you grow up in a family. And that could be like a half hour. So he said, until 7 times 70. That's 490 times. I happen to believe some of us actually almost keep a tallying thing. Okay, I've done it 490. The next time I'm justified. Who wins when we forgive? We win. We travel lighter. When we let it go, we win. And I don't think his message was that we're damned if we don't forgive, or that he's going to judge us. Well, we are damned. We do stop the circulation of love in ourself, but he's not going to judge you. You have now stopped that flow of love because you're the one that chose to pick up this resentment and block it. So I think more what he meant was not only let it go over and over to an innumerable amount of times, but I think he was also reminding us that the event happens once, but we'll revisit it to 490 times, and maybe more. How many of you are carrying some sort of a burden from your childhood that you still can revisit and have all this pain? Your toe will throb. You can bring all that pain right back to you all over again with just your thoughts. And it will only be your ego that wants to do that because it wants to be right. It wants to justify. It wants to rationalize or rationalize. Got that from Bob Proctor. I love that one. That's all it is. So I'm going to give you another example. The other issue that comes up with people is, but what about justice? It's not fair, that victim thing, okay? Because there are people out there that do ugly things to other people on purpose, and it causes more than a throb in their toe. It could change their life for the rest of their life. And they may do it absolutely on purpose. And I'm not going to do an example of that. I just want you to put that in the back of your mind. But I also believe, and this has given me much, much peace, and I think this comes from A Course in Miracles, that I think the quote does, every act is either an act of love or a call for love. When I come from that place, when I assume that, then even if I get stomped on, I can more quickly move to, man, they're really calling for love a lot. They're screaming out loud, screaming to be loved. The other part of forgiveness that comes up from our ego is, but what about justice? They got to be held accountable. They need to pay. Someone needs to pay for this. Again, that's all ego, and I'm not going to just put it away. I want to share with you this sublime experience I had parenting. Sometimes sublime. Sometimes Sally's ego chose different. Same situation. Now, I'm going to make this up, although it's likely it actually happened several times in my home. I have a child that's misbehaving, and I've had a rough day. And in my trying to get my things done and my kids bickering and doing their thing, in my anger, which is going to be my ego because I've now taken this personally, I'm trying to clean the house and you kids keep bickering and you're just ruining my life, okay? Real big victim mode. Can you see that? So I give them a timeout. You go sit in that chair, you sit there. I don't want either of you to talk. 10-minute break, okay? The kind of thing I probably might have actually done. I don't remember exactly those things. But my kids got timeouts. Now, that's really coming from ego. It's taking it real personally, and I can tell, especially as I look back, because of the energy that I put forth when I did it, out of anger. I did it from this angry space and may have raised my voice, been very stern. Now I'm going to share the opposite side, and this is what is sublime. Because we do not, I believe 100% that we can put people in jail with love. And that may mean, in today's society, prison. But for my analogy, it's just going to be my children. Same situation. Sally's being mom, doing her thing, 2 kids bickering, it doesn't stop. But rather than being all about me, taking offense and being in my ego, I'm in my higher self. And I realize I got 2 kids screaming for love. My action might be the exact same. Darling, it sounds like you 2 are having a little hard time today. How about you take a little time out over here, and darling, why don't you come over here, and I'm going to sit with each of you for about 5 minutes and just hear what your hearts are saying. Do you see that the consequence they got was the same? The energy behind it, however, total loving. We can't, forgiveness does not mean it did not happen. It does not mean people do not have to be held accountable. It does not mean that amends don't mean, the window doesn't need to be repaired because it got broken, or fill in the blank. All it means is I'm not going to carry the negative energy of it. I win. As soon as we get to that point, whenever we come from our divine self, from that highest self, we're able to release it. We're able to recognize that when we let go of assuming, when we let go of taking it personally, and we recognize that every person walking this earth has their own journey, their own hurt, throbbing toes. And they're allowed to be human. I want y'all to allow me to be human. Then, when we release that, we walk in freedom. That's all forgiveness is, walking in your own personal freedom. Jesus exemplified that at the end of his life, after being wrongly persecuted and a trial and everything else. As he was feeling the throbbing, he said, "Forgive them. They don't know what they're doing." Isn't that the attitude we want to have with every person, including ourselves? The holiday season is upon us. This can be such a time of joy and goodwill, and it can be a time of punishing ourselves. So if I could grant every person in here one wish, it would be that you're most gentle and loving with you. That you choose to not take yourself so personally. You cut yourself some slack. If it's important to you to make an amend, great, do it. If the other person doesn't accept it, it doesn't matter. You're free. You have no control over them, only you. This has been an amazing morning for me. I got to work on stuff I hadn't, see how well I could do on the fly, and practice the exact same things that I'm trying to preach. I love you. I'm fallible. When I step on your toe, let me know. Gently. And I'll try to let you know gently. And it's very likely you didn't do it on purpose, even if you're Kurt. I love you all. Thanks.
So I'm going to call the practitioners forward, please. We'll just do a little closing prayer. I don't know about you, but that worked for me. So let's just close our eyes for a minute if you're comfortable. And just step into that knowing, that place within each of us that is whole and perfect, that place where the divine shows up, always has and always will. That place where that ego is loved into love. Where we can and do step forward in the loving presence that we are. Allowing each person the space, the love that they need. But it needs to start with ourselves first. We need to love ourselves into that place of wholeness. I'm grateful for this morning. I'm grateful for every hand that brought this service to being. I'm grateful for Sally Jo for stepping into the greatness that she is and sharing such a powerful message. So I just release this word. It's spoken, therefore it's done. As together we say, and so it is.